there's like blockchain as the infrastructure technology, and then there's blockchain as like the political tool or economic tool. And I think that's where you actually do need to have people understand what they're doing and what they're using, because if you're trying to, have people participate in decentralized like governance systems, are going to have to know what they're doing. You can't just like, expect them to figure it out or not know what they're doing, because then that kind of refutes the purpose, right? It's like there's a part of blockchain that's like it just makes things more efficient, and like that's fine, that's back office operations. But when we talk about like decentralized governance, or now DAOs, like people are starting to talk about DAOs, I think more in the mainstream after NFTs. You kind of have to have people know what they're doing and what they're using, and like how different platforms operate, and like what different consensus mechanisms are involved, and all those kinds of like nitty-gritty details that if you're just building kind of like a basic app may not matter. But when you have systems that are participatory, you actually have to do a lot of education, which I think that is still severely lacking in the space. And I think it's going to continue to be kind of like the Achilles heel until someone figures it out.
That's funny you mentioned participatory, because those are actually, and literally it's the mechanism design, tokenomics, all that stuff. That's actually what I'm most interested in blockchain. But we're actually trying to solve for participatory protocols, right? The idea is that, at least from my perspective, blockchain doesn't need us, right?
No.
That's one of the dangers of it, right? It doesn't really need us, and if we don't program it right to work with us, that might be a potential, Skynet kind of situation. But with us, we're looking at, again, around skill sets and unique talents, and how do you design these participatory based protocols that the technology itself literally needs your talent in order for it to work, right? So on one side we have like machine computation, then on the other side we have like human production. Those are two different things that we feel like can actually go together when you create smart contracts to enable, solving problems and projects that address issues in ways that, again, with the current way the world is working now, we actually, I think, would be better suited using certain type of protocols to enable our technology to move more efficiently. Also, we are going to get into a data economy. We've been there. Like, all this stuff isn't new. We've been there, but I think it's now starting to catch up to mainstream. So it's like safe to talk about it. But data is the money. No, let's just be real. Data is the money, which means you are the money. So if you are the money, then how are you tracking, controlling, managing, optimizing the current which you produce? And I think that's one of the things that I see as a potential use case in blockchain, is to be able to capture your natural current. And if you can look at that as skills and talent and things like that, then we can actually create a world where unique experiences become the currency that we use to build more unique experiences. And I know I'm kind of going way into it, but that's like the beauty in blockchain. It's just like the internet. Nobody knows what the internet is. They just know that they use things that sit on top of or embedded into the internet. I think that's like where we are with blockchain. It's a general use case or a general purpose technology that, again, it is infrastructure. It's infrastructure. It's a lot of things. It's just like the internet, but it's about like the ideas that can go into it and can like integrate and use it to build new things. I think that's the real danger we face in looking at it as like a political tool and governance. Is we may potentially block out some needed innovations.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I think regulation, and we see it obviously as internet as a prime example of, when government tries to regulate internet without having like a solid foundation, or even like the big social media companies. You see all these hearings with, Zuckerberg and Sundar Pichai, who probably messed up his name. But you just see there's a big disconnect, and there's sort of like a knowledge gap between how the government sees technology and how they understand it working and like generating revenue. And so if you have, a governing body that is, sort of a couple steps behind and doesn't really understand it as well as the people actually running the companies, you just see there's people that like obviously take huge advantages from the government, huge tax breaks, huge sort of like monopolization. Definitely see that with Facebook. I mean, all of the acquisitions that you're like, wow, how did they just acquire a huge, you know, player like WhatsApp or Instagram, Oculus in like the VR or AR space. And so I think blockchain is, hopefully, you know, we did learn something from, and the government did learn something about like regulating technology through the internet. This isn't their first time. Yeah, no, a very optimistic view.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, I feel that
sentiment. But then you can also think about, and obviously there's internet, there's like different protocols and different international organizations, you know, made up of companies and different sort of stakeholders that might be more suited to regulate these new technologies, because they're like insiders. They actually have a stake, and there is some advantage for having some cooperation and some anti, you know, monopolization / anti, you know, not corruption, but sort of like feeding off the users of the system. What do you guys think about like sort of the regulation aspect of, you know, blockchain?
Well, just really quick, in our case, I think we're in a really, really fortunate position, whereas we sell our product to the government. So we already had legislation that informs how we build our blockchain infrastructure. That's the Department of Labor. Yeah. So we sell to workforce scores. Essentially, we sell a service that we sold on paper. We're just turning what was on paper into like protocols, essentially. But it's a workforce development program around career development, talent development, things like that. So for us, having the legislation, the infrastructure, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews with the directors, or at least the customers who are going to purchase this, who were and will purchase the paper version than the blockchain version. We're in a position where we know exactly what to do, how to do it, why to do it. It's just a matter of timing, right? And kind of getting the protocols right. I will say a couple things to some of the points you made. One, you can use the blockchain to do the exact same things that legacy technology or you know, central whatever are doing, and those attempts are being done right now if you understand how to watch it and see the plays that are being made. So there's a big move to like take essentially blockchain technology and just apply it to legacy infrastructure, right? And that's the first step. We're doing that. A lot of people are doing that. Around the regulation aspect, it's one of those situations where I think there's a natural conflict of interest. People naturally use tools to liberate themselves from constraints. I think the way our government, the way governance within, I'm trying to be like very careful here. You know how this goes, right?
I gave up on that a long time ago.
Man, can I be real? Can I, how real can I be, bro? You know me,
you can be as real as you want, bro.
As real as you want the internet to be real.
Get me in trouble. I'm not a co-founder of a company, man. I'm just...
my customers agree with my philosophy, so it's like I don't have that issue. I'm not like an industry person. I'm building for government with government. No, like certain aspects of governments, like the way our legislation works. The big corporations are funding the legislation, right? The big corporations are trying to prevent the small businesses and people who want to use these same tools to liberate themselves from those constraints that the big corporations are putting on them, right? So there's a conflict of interest in the legislators who fund you and then who votes for you, right? And I don't want to get into like how all that stuff works, but the point that I'm getting to is a lot of times you find that the laws seem to benefit existing corporations as opposed to like emerging corporations' ideas and things like that. So I think that's one of the big challenges we face in looking at this blockchain legislation. Also, on a personal note, I feel that we're just like trying to slide the like IRS in there and see if we can like tax all these transactions from what I do agree is like securities. At the end of the day, I do think a lot of the DeFi projects are basically securities. Like, you know, you go in there to get a profit and you take it out to go do some stuff, right? And there's a fundamental difference in a security and a utility. So again, how after that, I think once that legislation comes through, those who were truly using this for a use case, I think your issue may become whether it's looked at as like a commodity at some point, because that's going to be the next legislation that comes, right? But yeah, I think that's like the big thing is like if your protocol is designed to just to like gain more yields or just increase like the token, but the token doesn't have any real use case outside of like financial instruments, then yeah, you're going to be regulated. And I mean, you're engaging in what the system like. That's what the financial system was designed to do this stuff. Yeah, so it's like you're doing it, so you should like be taxed for it. You're playing by the play by the game, play by the rules. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, it's funny. The more I get away from the space, the more I like agree with that sentiment. It's funny. I think like when I first started, there's like kind of this like crypto anarchist core and like tendency in the space that I feel like has just evaporated. In my opinion, sadly, I don't think it's evaporated. It's there. It's just been what's it
diminished?
Not even diminished. Yeah, I'm just like it's just been shouted out, right, or like pushed out, right? They don't scream as loud and they're not as flashy, and they're not promising to make you a millionaire. And like it's way easier for people, right, to be like, yeah, come get rich using this, as opposed to like let's fundamentally redesign how like our society operates. Most people actually don't want to do that work and don't want to like think about like what that entails. So then they're like, fuck it, I'll just like buy a picture of a fucking sketch of a monkey and then like that's fine.
A neon cut,
yeah, I'm just like, okay, cool. It's just like you're doing really the like actually like I have a lot of critiques on DeFi. Like I think one of my best friends works in DeFi and she actually runs an organization called SheFi, and she's all about like empowering women using crypto, and like she has seen real kind of material improvements in like women's financial like education and access like to building wealth. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But I think there has been a bit of a democratization of like access to wealth, but at the same time, like it's sort of like not, in my opinion, what it was like originally intended to do. Like blockchain technology. Like I always will say, or I always used to say, like go back and read the like Satoshi Nakamoto white paper on Bitcoin and then come and talk to me. Like if you haven't read the white paper, like I don't want to hear it from you.
Your opinions.
Because because it's just like it's like you worship Bitcoin, but then you're doing like
you're defeating the purpose.
Yeah, you're literally like doing the exact opposite of what like Satoshi wanted, and then you're doing it in the name of Satoshi, and I'm like, this is sacrilegious. But I mean, people are gonna do what they want to do, so I'm having to like let that go. But yeah, I think in terms of regulation, especially when it comes to DeFi, like if people are playing with like huge sums of money and are dealing with really uneducated consumers, like there is a reason why you have to be like like accredited investor, to like invest in a startup, like or like why you like there's a difference between that, and then like buying some stocks, via like Republic. Like there's a reason those things operate in like different realms. And like the crypto world has really blurred that line, and I think there is an increased need for regulation because people are just getting harmed, and like that probably will come back to bite me in the ass because like maybe in like a year I'm going to be like down, which like I usually am that way, but I feel like I've just seen a lot of people get fucked.
We'll have you back on
really
once
hard to watch. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, my sentiments change every day. Like, I'm fully aware of like the irony and the paradox of my ideas. And I think that's just like thinking about things critically. You notice the holes in your own logic, but
definitely,
I do think for things like DeFi, I do think they need to be regulated. Because it's just. And like, again, like you were talking about, like what is the security? Like that was so many conversations came out of the ICO bubble, right? In like 2018, like 2017, 2018. And those things melted away so fast. And the pace of the government is just atrocious. And so that's where I think like, it's like, regulation is great when it comes from the government. I think in tandem, just like having better fucking leadership of these companies that isn't just capitalist recreation would be great, but that feels like a pipe dream. So, like, you know, it's like I think, you know, I don't know. I think, like, yeah, if, like, the government won't do it, then you have to, like, look at the people that are running the companies. But the people that are running the companies, like, a lot of them aren't driven by, like, I would say the OG
philanthropic
ideals.
Or,
not even philanthropic, just, like,
just real shit. They don't care. Like, they honestly don't care. Like, they don't
care. And it's, like, there's a bigger game to play. So, like, for example, like DAOs, like, which is like a decentralized autonomous organization, which is kind of like a new way of like self-governance, like in a community, like that's really cool, but it takes a lot of time and work, and like people are messy. But like, and when you do things with governance, like you're dealing with people, and like the people that I see running organizations that are focused on that, like have a very different mentality than the people that like are ex-Goldman Sachs that are like, fuck it, I'm just gonna like make a new protocol that like literally is mimicking, but it's like an automatic market maker or automated market maker, whatever the fuck, and like make just like a lot of money. And I'm like, I feel very conflicted about the DeFi space, and because it just is, it's just the Wild West again. And then what happens is like if when the market bottoms out, like you're going to end up with like, you know, just a handful of whales who are going to, again, recolonize like Puerto Rico and just buy a bunch of mansions and like evade taxes. And then like the rest of us are just going to be like, oh no. And like, it's like, we've seen it before. Like,
how did this happen?
Yeah. But it's like, there's so many new people in the space now that they didn't live through that. They didn't see that. And we don't really have a great like recorded history of it. You know, it's kind of like with anything in history. Like, and so people are just like, oh my gosh, it's so shiny. And then like, I feel like I'm the like Grim Reaper. I just kind of run around and like sprinkle down in the space. Just because I do believe in the potential. I just think, you know, it's beautiful how accessible it is. It's beautiful that it's open source. It's beautiful that there's low barriers to entry, but that also means there's like incredibly increased amount of risk that people aren't aware of. It's like false advertising, right? Like people are intentionally not describing the risk because like they just want to make money, and like that is just lowbrow to me. Now they would beg to differ, right? Like you get like you put another person on, like, and we can debate, and we will just live in different universes. But that's my opinion.
No, a lot of that resonates with me. I think that's funny. Like, so I think there's like almost like there's a reason why DeFi came first. There's a reason why like everything always gets introduced as like speculative shit, right? I think this phase that we've been in for the last few years, this speculative phase, has been one to allow the so-called whales and titans of tech to move their money over, get in position, and then better understand the technology so that they can see how it applies to their technology. I think one of the big distractions is looking at blockchain technology as money. That's what I always try to explain to my family and just like friends around me. It's like, you can't see it as money unless you can see yourself as money. That's like that's the thing. Unless you can see yourself as money, that is money, right?